Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Yeah, Adam. Yeah, welcome to the show.
How you
Well, your
doing?
show, actually.
Yeah.
So I guess I should be welcomed by the show, right? Because
Right.
you're the host, or it's about you. But anyway, we just showed a little video clip, GIF of, or GIF, is it GIF or
I
GIF?
think it's GIF.
Anyway,
GIF.
for the protests who are helping get behind, and actually it's Adam's brainchild and the Flint Media Group, a newly forming group here in Flint, involving Flint Talk and also All Points TV, and Adam's input because his career as a activist. So anyway, welcome to the show, and we're going to go riff on a lot of stuff. And in case people are wondering why we're here today, I'll put this up here. Adam Garrix is running as a writing candidate for the Genesee County prosecutor slot, currently being held by David Layton. So,
Right.
and you've got some unique experiences I think would make you kind of qualify. I think makes you qualified to just as good as he is, I guess, because even though he's a lawyer and you're not, we went into that before in the first show. So actually, a prosecutor doesn't really have to be an attorney.
Well, see, that's interesting that you say that because I have this article here. I was going to take a little bit out of it to kind of help explain that a little bit better because he is an attorney. Like anybody basically can be a lawyer. Like they're not equivalent. So like someone that doesn't have the license to actually practice in court. And I'm going to quote from this article in a second, but that's the simplest way to put it. People can do law work, but they have to be licensed to be an attorney. You can still call your attorney your lawyer because that's what he's doing is he's practicing law, but to actually appear in court. So basically, that's what this article says is, I mean, of course, most would think preferably it'd be law school, but any kind of formal education and practice in law is practice, and ultimately isn't our system all about being able to represent yourself anyway?
That's a distinction too, people don't miss. And the people that I got familiar with at first are people that were the constitutionalists, and they actually make a distinction. Okay, when you say you're a child and your mom or dad is getting of age, I'm just using it for example, they can grant you power of attorney over their affairs, but that doesn't make you a practicing lawyer. So there's a difference.
Doesn't make you a practicing attorney.
Attorney, yeah, practicing
be a
attorney,
lawyer,
but you
but-
have power of attorney.
Right.
But there is a distinction that's like you got to be made. But you can act as attorney for yourself.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Well,
You've done that.
as a lawyer.
You've done that
Yeah, as a lawyer.
as a lawyer.
Yeah.
So,
Not,
but
not
so
as an
it's-
attorney because I don't have a license.
See, now the other thing is too, people,
But
and I
I
don't know
grew
if
up.
this is,
Wait, I got like some kind of buzz in here.
okay, can you turn it down a bit? Does that help?
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah.
Okay, but I kind of grew up in the system too, so I can talk about all that later. But
Is-
I mean, besides formal education at Mott and San Francisco Community College, I've had a lot of practice in the system.
Yeah.
So
This is because say you've been an activist for, well, you're in your 40s and probably a better part of your life you've been an activist in some fashion or other, haven't you?
I think growing up in the court system kind of made me that, plus other influences from my family and my dad, and coming up in the 70s and stuff as a little kid. But and then of course Jello Biafra and some Crass or Conflict, some real punk rock. But anyway, my family being typical divorced custody battle situation. Hell, I was in court at like 5 or 6 or 7 when my parents were fighting over custody of the kids. So I kind of watched the process starting even as an early age, like a lot of other people have. But I've also done things with activism, but also for my own self personally with the custody of my kids. I'm the plaintiff, not the defendant from day one, and not a lot of people can say that because they get caught up and they don't pay attention to what's going on or pay their child support or don't show up for hearings or whatever. But at any rate, I did my own bankruptcy. I got paternity for my son and legal rights, like joint custody parenting rights for a period. And yeah, so I mean, I've got a bit of experience going way back. Here, let me read some of this article here.
Go ahead.
What's the difference between a lawyer and a district attorney? District attorney, DA, is one of several names given to people licensed to practice law throughout various legal systems in the U.S. DAs represent the government during criminal prosecutions and are responsible for starting and directing further criminal investigations, guiding and recommending the sentencing of offenders, and are the only attorneys allowed to participate in grand jury proceedings. Furthermore, if the case goes to trial, DAs are accountable for doing their best to convict the defendant on behalf of the government. Okay. Let's see here. The DA manages a team. The district attorney manages a team of prosecutors, assistant district attorneys who represent the state and prosecute criminals. District attorneys can be chosen by the chief executive of the jurisdiction or elected by the voters of the jurisdiction. Okay, so again, that goes back to, okay, I can't go into court as the prosecutor because I'm not a practicing attorney. You know what I'm saying? But I have enough of a formal education and practice in being in that environment and in court that I could direct a team of licensed attorneys to go, which is what the prosecutor does anyway. And again, is probably why it's not a requirement that you have a law degree. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's the distinction. An attorney is licensed, a lawyer is not. And other people can practice law too, they just don't know the ins and outs of it enough to be able to do it. Simple.
It's an intimidating process.
Simple as that, you know.
Yeah, it's an intimidating process to be in court for most people. And that's like plays in the hands of the people who are the professionals. I mean, you're a person who's a novice coming there cold, you can't afford an attorney or you don't think one's going to take your case. And a lot of times around here, in certain instances, certain types of cases, finding an attorney to represent you is a difficult process. I mean, so.
Tell me about it.
It's a very limited pool here. Anyway,
Is that me here? Should I turn this down?
what are you hearing? What are you hearing? Like
Maybe it's the wire. I'm sorry about that.
it's like, there's something going on here too. I'm having a little bit more of a background feedback than I usually do for some reason. And all the settings are the same when I came in here.
Gets a little buzzy now and then.
Yeah.
Like
So,
on some words. But anyway, so like I've explained the difference between a lawyer and an attorney. Attorney is a lawyer, but a lawyer may not necessarily be an attorney. Although the two words mean the same thing and can be used interchangeably, there are some differences. A lawyer is simply one who is trained in the law. Any person who has attended law school in the United States can consider themselves a lawyer. However, until they pass the bar exam in the jurisdiction in which they intend to work, the method by which they use their lawyering skills is limited. An attorney or attorney at law is also a lawyer who has attended law school, passed a bar examination, and been admitted to practice law in a particular jurisdiction. Attorneys can provide legal representation to an individual and appear in court and other settings on behalf of their client. In other words, a lawyer/attorney is a professional who is qualified to offer advice about the law or represent someone in legal matters. Lawyers' clients may include individuals, groups, law firms, or businesses, sometimes the government. Lawyers' responsibilities include researching applicable laws and prior court rulings, preparing legal documents, and when necessary, arguing cases in court. Through their education and work experience, attorneys can specialize in various areas of legal practice, including employment law, immigration, civil rights, etc. You know what I'm saying? So I can only do the work to a point, unless it's like a pro per situation or something, you know what I'm saying? But to represent, in court, I'd have to have that license. But again, it's a political position that manages assistant district attorneys and all these other people, below them. And they are the ones that go to court. Because believe me, Layton's not going to every single case every day.
He's not.
I've met some of his underling prosecutors, like face to face.
Well,
So
I can hear people say, I try to anticipate other people's objections, and they're gonna say, well, you know, you running as a non-lawyer, running for this position, is gonna be, you're gonna be, you're an activist, you got a bent on something, you're gonna be going in a direction we might be not agreeing with, or whatever. But I would say that I would challenge that by just saying, I don't know a prosecutor yet that some way is not an activist. They have certain
Indeed.
bailiwicks they stick with, certain things that they've been voted in on, given mandates allegedly they're trying to follow through on. So I think that activism charge kind of largely is
Well,
baseless.
that's the whole, isn't that like the whole thing with Biden? Like, what's the jokes going around? Like, they built the cages and they used them or whatever. I mean, or the other guy used them or whatever. I mean, in '94, with the whole crime bill and all that, I mean, yeah, definitely. So prosecutors in Flint, definitely. You know, I agree completely. I guess is what I'm saying. Like, it was a political practice, if you will.
Yeah, let's face it, I mean, we would be stupidly naive, or stupid or naive, whatever you want to say, but I think it's stupidly naive to believe that the people in the legal system aren't there for a purpose.
Right.
And the reason what the purposes are could be vary from individual to individual, obviously, and to organizations they're tied to or whatever. But let's face it, I don't know anyone that is not in political thing. It's all political. It's political even though it's not supposed to be. Let's face it, legal system is greatly formed by political opinion.
Yeah.
Political,
Well, what's the big thing with Coney Bryant? Was it Coney Bryant, the ACB, the
right.
Supreme Court Justice? Everybody's freaked out about her pro-life position and how Catholic she is, and you know, I mean, obviously she's going to be pro-life and probably the way she makes her decisions, but it's, you know, it's a political issue, so you know.
I don't see how you can, and I don't think I don't see how you could ask people to totally divorce themselves from their own personal lives. I mean, I don't see, that's going to change your worldview. Your personal views
Sure.
do kind of form how you see the world. Your worldview is changed by whatever what you were taught as a child, what you came into contact with on your own. So, I mean, I don't see where, it's going to be awfully hard to walk this fine line where you can actually totally divorce yourself from your own ideas of morality or ethics.
Of course.
And I don't think that should be all the time divorced from it. I think you have to bring that in.
But that's
to
the
some
thing
degree.
about lawyers, isn't it? Right? And that's, or I guess attorneys, is that they're not supposed to care. Like, they're above that. They're just your representation, your advocate. They're a hearsay witness, actually.
In a way they are, yeah.
So, you know,
Well, besides, for what you just listed about before, about the definition of an attorney, a lawyer and all that, somebody went to a law school and accepted it, went past the bar exam, admitted to the bar. Basically, they're saying, the bar, when they let a person in, they're saying, we find this person conforming to our standards. And that's, let's face it, a lot of times it's, in a given society, some things about that should be kind of a cause for concern. If you're being accepted by the establishment of the legal system, how much, if you're not,
Well,
and
they-
everybody
and they-
else isn't part of that,
and they take priority, I mean, I've sat in court many times where people that actually had an attorney, were, like, they do it, I guess maybe they do it to expedite things, like, or whatever, but, there's some sort of, like, tier and priority, it seems. And so, I guess that's why they say if you're a millionaire and you can afford it, you can have an attorney and tell them to do whatever you want, just about, but if you're an average person, good luck unless you've been shot or, lead poisoned or some, out there thing. Yeah. So.
because if anybody believes that this legal system's fair and impartial,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not,
No.
okay, it isn't. I don't want to go, I don't think it's just racism, I think that's a dimension of it, or it's another facet of it.
Absolutely.
But I also think it's classism at work there.
There you go.
Just sheer arrogance of, let's face it, the
Or-
educated people.
Or towing the party line. I mean, what do we have in Flint, right? It's like mostly a lot of black people that were probably affected by the 1994 crime bill, and the last several prosecutors, I don't think, I guess Layton's been pretty light on weed, they say, but I don't think much has changed just since then, till now. And now, like, what was that story I was complaining about with him? that there was somebody that's got like 60 years or something shit like that for a weed charge that he wasn't guilty of, or I don't know. And now he's like concerned about trying to help him get out, but he's one of like probably a dozens that prosecuting attorneys and prosecuting attorneys like him, you know, put in jail. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Well, so you know,
That's party line. That's just not caring. It's a class thing, I think. Also, you
Yeah,
know, because
definitely.
again, we're talking about that attorney culture, or whatever. So, yeah.
so I think
That's
that's
my
the thing.
thought.
We bring up a lot of points of why our legal system isn't this unfair and impartial thing that a lot of people see depicted on TV.
Oh, yeah.
It's not. And then lately, they've been covering that better. That, you know, that's the trueness, the true accuracy of the legal system.
I get
Because
it.
I've seen horrible miscarriage of justice because the person that was facing the charges didn't have adequate legal representation. I've seen things, the cops do horrible stuff they got away with that led to a prosecution that should never have gotten away with. So, I mean, if I've seen it in my own personal life, I'm sure it happens more often. I mean, I don't try to ferret this stuff out. It just, you know, it's there in my face. You
Well,
know,
that's the
people that
thing
have been
too. It's like,
around.
okay, this guy that's doing 60 years or whatever. That's one of like how many that were like that from prosecutors like Layton or Art Bush or all these other people that basically probably did just toe the Democrat Party line. But you know, I got my own personal experience. Hell, like I said before in previous shows, one of the cops in my lawsuit against the City of Flint Police Department sat right on the stand and, you know, said he lied to get a warrant. He said I said things and did things I didn't do and exaggerated to make sure he could get the warrant to arrest me in 2013. So he flat lied. Now the question is, to me, because gee thanks, now you finally told the truth and I got it on record. But also, how many other people did he do that to?
Yeah.
How many other people, him and those dicks that he was running with for all those years as drug cops or whatever, how many people did they do that to or do something like that to? You know,
Yeah,
and then all their entire integrity becomes into question because, like, evidence, planting, whatever, you know, not reporting certain accidents or rape even or something, you know, like, I mean, it brings any case, I think, in my opinion, with those two cops in particular, that they've, you know, helped prosecute, it brings all their testimony into question, and probably a lot of people.
Well, a few months ago, I posted something about police officers, critical of them, and this guy said something responded, and I said, well, there's nothing worse than a dirty cop. You know, a lying cop, and he goes, it sounds like you're like a sleazeball, you know, a jailhouse attorney. So, I mean, if you don't believe that by the narrative, white middle-class America, the suburbs think that the police officers are always our friends. It's like, no, they're lying little shits a lot of times, okay? Okay, I mean, I've heard these guys, they didn't know the people were listening in, like at restaurants, diners, coffee shops, bragging on how they lied under the oath and set that son of a bitch up. I mean, so, sorry. When I heard it from their own effing mouths, I'm going to say there's a cause and reason to question their veracity, all right?
Absolutely.
And that angers me. When every time you say, and I try to tell people this, I say, you think you're immune to being charged with something you didn't do.
I just, in both situations, here at Stone Street and out in Montrose, nightmare neighbors. That's what it really boils down to. And it just so happens that the dickheads that were screwing with me here in Flint actually had an office out there in Montrose, too. So, you know, that Pervendorfer supervisor out in Montrose and his brother that was caught at the tanning booth with the 14-year-old. I mean, this whole cadre of people are a joke. And a lot of what they do should be brought into question, I'm sure. And I've heard plenty of stories from people out in Montrose about how they've abused their authority out there in the same way. But again, it just so happens to be the same group of cops
Right.
from Flint and Montrose
Well, they're all related.
working together.
Families have a
You know,
tendency to
there's
go
more,
to certain
there's more
types of
to it,
professions.
but that's the gist of it, you know. So
Families have a tendency to go into certain professions, like shop workers. Their kids become shop workers largely. But back when we had shops to employ people, cops. We had a big family of cops and paramedics and deputies. Last name of the Floridas, and they had all kinds of ancillary cousins and third and fourth cousins and you know aunts and uncles that were different names. But how many people did they occupy? How many people of their family occupied spots in the county payroll for over 30-year period, 40-year period.
Sure.
So, I mean, they have a tendency, I got friends who, and they're friends, they're good people, but they had family members who are cops, their dad was a cop, their granddad was a cop, their cousin's a cop, or now that one's on the fire department. So I'm not saying they're all bad, but it's a culture that sets up that everybody else is the outsider. We pay for their existence, but we're the outsider, and they feel like they have a right to do whatever the hell they want to the rest of
Sure,
us.
yeah.
So,
It's like how the intelligence community is, you know, it's like, that's why I love Seth MacFarlane. I really hope Seth Green's not a pervert, but, American Dad, you know, Langley, Virginia. I mean, they do have suburbs of people that work in that whole machine, you know, that's there in Langley. It's not just the CIA agents that they show you in the movies or whatever. There's data entry people and like lower level people, and it's like a whole culture. So yeah, you can see how that becomes like this wall of us and them, you know, from there to local cops to whatever. I mean, in my case, in Montrose, it's more of like a Dukes of Hazzard situation.
lost hog potential, yeah.
We got called over here because we heard you was playing some rap music.
Sounds something like
I'm
from
like,
Footloose.
really?
No, it's like, no, the thing is, people say, well, you're just complaining, you ran afoul, shut up, take your lumps, move on. And I've heard that before when I've ran into law enforcement. Fortunately, I never had to go as far as court. It's just stuff that they said or did angered me.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that I didn't have to go to court because it is a daunting thing. It is a daunting thing because
Yeah.
you are in their court. You are in their hands,
Yeah.
okay? You have, let's face it, a judge, if he just doesn't like you, can get you for contempt.
Indeed.
That's happened.
Yeah.
And they don't even have to have anything that's relevant to the case or your presentation of the facts or your testimony. They can hold you in contempt for anything. And that's kind of I think that's going to be reined in too. But obviously, some people say it hasn't locally been done, abused too often, so that's not a concern. But
don't know about that.
I think the thing should be in place before there is a problem with it. That's why I think there
Well,
should be
there-
stops
I
stops
could,
in
say,
the
I
measures.
could speak from personal experience. There's a problem with it.
Yeah, but that's what I say. Unfortunately, I never had to go that far.
But you know
I
the
mean,
funny thing is, all the stuff that they've done to me in the last 7 years, they keep trying to say like I'm violent or I resisted arrest or I had drugs with me or whatever. Every single thing, screw you. I never did any of it. And it's so funny that all that time and effort got spent in tax dollars and people going to court, cops going down to federal court, and just like this ridiculous amount of effort for absolutely nothing other than a personal beef and vendetta against me. Like it's hilarious. If
Right,
I
and
was
they
as
do all the-
violent as if I was as violent as they tried to make me out to be, then there should be like a whole path of dead bodies. I mean, everybody's capable of anything if they want to be, I guess, but it's not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not a violent person. I might be an asshole. You might not like what I have to say. And if you piss me off, it might be a little threatening. But you got to touch me. Then all bets are off. But if I'm not going to touch you. You might, like I said, I'll call you every name in the book. You won't like it. But I've never just hauled off and socked somebody for no reason or for a difference of opinion or some bullshit like that. So, or anything. Never resisted arrest. I've spent my entire activist career getting arrested and only resisting arrest when the theatrics of it was newsworthy. Otherwise, it was not. We went Gandhi. Okay. Every time.
I've seen video of, encounters with cops from other people, and they actually did not, they submitted, they put their hands, and because the cop was having a hard time putting their cuffs on or something, they're, don't resist, and they start putting, it's like, no, it's your anger level. That person's doing nothing to provoke that. You can see that it's clearly on video.
Right.
So, I mean, I am so tired of people.
I don't know if anybody saw my 2013 video. You've seen it, right? The 2013 video arrest.
Yeah.
I didn't provoke him.
Another thing is, if you ask questions, if they're coming to you and they start asking, I'm
front of
asking
my-
the questions. Bullshit. You can answer
He's in
you can
front of
answer
my
questions
property.
too. Right.
He's in front of my property. He's pointing at my property. Who the fuck are you? It's Stone Street. It's not developed yet. Kettering hasn't bought everybody out yet. It's still kind of Wild Westy. And I know the scumbag that's with you, but I don't know you, the guy with the beard. But I mean, I didn't verbally assault them or anything, or I mean, told the truth about Monahan ripping off appliances from my baby mama, but still, it wasn't even that aggressive. I was like laughing mostly through it, you know, because I guess I kind of knew.
But basically, I think the attitude of police officer, I'm going to say this, and it's going to anger people, I'm going to hear about it, but I think every time a lot of cops think when they come up to you, you're supposed to drop to the ground, flat face, in the dirt, groveling and begging for forgiveness. That's why I think cops want you to be, that's why I'm thinking a lot of cops have that attitude. Because, I mean, if they can't understand the concept of them being employed by a municipality, they're not here to help you out at all.
Right.
They're not. They're not.
Well, you know what's
they're not.
interesting too is I've had like kind of both experiences where like I got extorted by one cop in Monroe County, and then another time I got a ticket here, and the ticket was like, they said this isn't even a valid ticket or whatever when I went to go and deal with it. But anyway, like in Monroe County, I was on my way back from California. I was like literally on the last like 50 miles or something, you know, or whatever, almost out of gas and had just enough for gas to get there and get some food, get back to Flint. And this cop in the middle of the night in Monroe County at the very, very northern edge pulls me over. And, it's because I jumped over I was all the way to the left lane and I jumped over to the right to get onto the exit ramp because I almost missed it. But it was like the middle of the night, nobody was out there. And I wasn't speeding or anything. But anyway, he ended up taking $40 from me. I went down to court in Monroe County about the ticket. And I explained that to the judge, and the judge just said, okay, and just took it off my record. I think he believed me. I'm not sure. I don't know. But the cop took $40, left me $20 for gas. And then here in Flint, State Boy pulled me over at Pearson and North Dort because of the crack in my windshield in my Aztec. That, and there's like a railroad viaduct right there where it dips under, you know. And I hate that, man. I can't be side by side on some, and you know, but one car in either lane as you go underneath that, it's like thread and needle with some idiot next to you, like, you know. I just either slow down or if I'm ahead of them, I go ahead, you know. And the state cop pulled up right next to me, right as we're going under the viaduct, so I slowed down so we could go under the viaduct first, and then come back out the other side, and then he pulled up behind me and pulled me over right past the viaduct, and I don't even remember what the ticket was for. I think it was just a cracked windshield or something. But I went down to pay it or whatever, and they said, no, you don't have to worry about it. And, you know, so I've had like kind of weird, fucked up experiences, like the Monroe County cop, where the state cop was like cordial. I didn't let him search my car or anything, but he was like, I guess he thought I might have drugs or something. I was actually going to one of the food giveaways up there, but the cracked windshield and the fact that I slowed down next to him was enough. But I didn't resist, I didn't give any attitude, you know, gave him my license or whatever, and got that stupid ticket, and then went down to deal with it, and it was like nothing. So it was irritating, but I was cordial, he was cordial, didn't have to be, you know. But most of the time, no, I don't have that, you know, decent of an experience.
So I always tell people, comply with them even if it's unreasonable.
Yeah.
And comply with them, and
have
but hold your anger in. That's hard for me because I've seen a lot of stuff that the cops, I'm just saying, what are they teaching the academy? It doesn't seem like they're teaching you crap, because I know this stuff. I went through a couple classes over at Mott for law enforcement. It was like a procedural law class. It was taught by a practicing attorney at that time, too. And I just don't see how these people get accepted into get employed by people, by municipalities, because they just think they're so undereducated about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, what they're allowed or not allowed to do as a cop.
Well, needless to say, the kid that ass-packed my mom's minivan when I first started doing these shows again, it's never been followed up on. I mean, that was like 4 months ago. Or whatever.
Oh, yeah, several months
I guess
ago,
it's
yeah.
minor because nobody died, but still, I mean, the car was ass-packed, destroyed, and kid left the scene, and the cop knew about it. And then in that case, you know, which I've found often with cops, the arrogance is just the pushy bulliness in the way they conduct themselves if they don't want to do something. You know what I'm saying? Especially in a case like that. Yeah. So I've never really had a good experience with cops and even the simplest things most of the time. You know.
One time they came in because there was a false alarm from my house for the alarm system. And they came in, they're very respectful. That was the first time I actually had cops show up without really knowing I needed them, but, I mean, I actually turned out I didn't need them, so. But they were very polite. So that was one incident, that was like 10 years ago. So, I mean, I could say that marked out down in the plus side. But they typically, the Flint cops that I've dealt with, they seem angry they have to come out to a call. Even if, and then when you answer the questions, then they turn on you and say, they're kind of pissed if you actually give them proper and quick responses, because it sounds too rehearsed. I mean, actually, that sounds too rehearsed. I went, because I'm telling you the facts. Why would I try to create some or stretch to, come up with some information to hand you? It's the facts. So I just basically, I just a frustration level, I just try to avoid even talking to a cop, because, I mean, the anger level goes up, and I might say something that might provoke them, and they got a gun, they got friends that got guns. I don't want to deal with them. I don't. I'd rather not even deal with them. Matter of fact, I have friends who are married to former police officers, and there are former cops. Some of them seem like nice guys. I've done a show with a guy who was well, he's a cop now, and he's also been a police chief and all that. Great guy. Seems like he's a person, but I never ran into him in the role that he was supposed to be in at that municipality or whatever. So, I mean, I never had to deal with him that level. Now, now that he knows me, and if I had to accidentally ran into him, would that change the outcome? I don't know. But, because, I mean, it just seems to be a culture. And then again, that culture is going to be very hard to prevent from developing. Because let's face it, you and I, anybody comes in the studio after a while, we have a kind of develop a culture here. We have certain things we know are permissible, some things that we're okay with, some things we don't do. But I mean, that's the way it is with every profession, within every department, it's its own pre-existing things coming into it. Everybody comes with their own issues or whatever, so
Tribal.
it's going to be hard to avoid.
It's the tribal part of us that you
Very
can't,
part.
that we can't avoid. That's what happens. People are common to each other, but it can also be prevented in the way people are trained and how to conduct themselves too, because there's just always a constant. If it's not like me in the last couple of years, where it's like actually concerted effort by a couple of different people, it's just some asshole cop. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I don't know. The whole defund the police, what do you do about the police issue, to me, should start there, like I said earlier, with looking at, not, like that, like I've called the Freedom Project about issues like this, and it's so funny how some of these groups are, like, so notable for getting one or two people out, but, like, then when you present them with the possibility of being able to get a whole bunch of people out, or maybe a handful of people out, and you've got information, that could be helpful to them. It's not newsworthy, it doesn't happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, like,
Oh, yeah.
there should be, like, a review periodically, if that's the case. If such horrendous mistakes have been made that people are spent, like, their whole entire youth in jail since the 90s for shit they shouldn't have. I mean, what's the biggest one? Is like, it was heavier. It was a heavier case if you had crack, but not cocaine. And wasn't there something too about back in the day of, like, it was the same thing with white guys. Like, if white guys got caught with, like, acid or ecstasy or some shit like that in the 90s, they got hit just as hard as if they were a black guy with crack.
Yeah,
But,
see, I mean,
but
there is a-
cocaine was not as bad of or something like that. Wasn't it something like that?
Yeah, there
it was
was.
like a tiered thing anyway.
You're right.
It was like silly.
That's
silly.
interesting you bring that up. I was just thinking about approaching that subject, just when you were talking. There is a distinction between, like you're talking about, flake cocaine and crack cocaine. And the politicians then rallied and came up with legislation that made it harsher on people caught with crack cocaine. And a large portion of that was actually, from what I was told by the politicians who actually did this, and I think during the debate that Trump and Biden had just the other night, it was kind of alluded to, there was a difference in how they were, these two suspects, basically using the same chemical. Crack cocaine and flake cocaine is not vastly different. They're the same kind of drug, but in different forms. But a large portion of that, I remember this coming out back in the early 2000s when this addressed, the large portion of that political response came out of agitation and concern coming out of the black community. So the politicians thinking, like, we're going to make a trounce on this. We're going to trounce on this crack cocaine use. And guess what? It definitely impacted more negatively on the black community.
Yeah.
You see, it's one of those things of unintended consequences. I mean, some things sound great. I mean, when I was a kid, I was like, when I was younger, back in the Reagan era, he came across that, they created what they call the RICO statutes, right? Sounds good, because, organized crime was a big issue. If you get them with this kind of a legislative, law, that'd be great. But some of them, the thing is, after it's been acted, they've only used it a handful of times, and then they've been largely using it for political groups, against political groups, political powers and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was never intended to be used that way, but they found an opening. That's what it is. It's a weapon. You don't forge a weapon, leave a beautiful weapon in the middle of an empty room where anybody can come in and use it, okay? That's my thing. And they don't think about the consequences. If they jump on one thing, there's that problem with that knee-jerk reaction. It's not just the right that does that. The left does it too. They don't want to admit to it, but when it comes about the 80s and 90s, when I saw the epidemic of crack, hitting. Matter of fact, I knew several families who had babies that are born addicted to crack in their family, and the grandmothers are taking care of the kid because the mom was still strung out doing stuff that she wasn't supposed to. And so, it was well-intended, maybe. They can make that argument. It was well-intended to deal with an issue. But,
Yeah,
doesn't-
but it just harkens back to the same thing about like jazz musicians and weed back in that time. It's the same kind of scapegoating, and plus, and you say unintended consequences, but I don't know. I think there were some intended
well,
consequences.
there could all be, but I'm just, my personal opinion, I
Intended
agree with
consequences
you.
for sure. Bringing crack into the neighborhoods.
See, I've younger people too. I never use drugs. I never smoke weed. I never have.
Well,
I'm for
meth
legalization.
meth was a white thing, right?
What'd you say?
Meth was a white thing.
Right thing,
and
yeah.
Crack was the black thing. And, I mean, I think there's intended consequences.
I go on a limb though. I tell people, and they get furious. They call me all kinds of names, but I think legalization of drugs is probably the best approach.
Yeah.
Because with a person, okay, they dabble
All
in
drugs.
it. They dabble in it. Some people are going to leave it. Some people are going to hook on it. Okay, that's the way it is with alcohol, cigarettes. But okay, the alcoholic, when they go to AA meetings, doesn't have a bunch of cops waiting for them outside, to take them back and
Well, I don't know. Maybe,
Typically.
depending on what town you're in.
right. But it could be. But I'm just saying, the social stigma is bad enough. Okay, and let's face it. Even the drug using community itself, those who use certain types of drugs by other people are considered in or out, bad, good. They look down. I mean, I've had people crack on people who were weed smokers, rag on people who did acid. I've had some that did. I had friends that did all of those drugs. Okay, so I mean, but the thing is, I just don't see where dealing with the legal system, now having a mark against your name so you can't get employment, is going to add better to the community, society overall, the individual lives, their families' lives, or even their friends' lives. I just don't see dealing with that conviction. I mean, I don't like drug use. I'm not condoning it.
No, me neither.
I just think it's a reality. Some people think they need to medicate. I don't understand it. I mean, especially.
I think the biggest issue for me in any case, and I don't put weed in this category, is that if somebody's doing something like heroin and driving, and because what kills me is this like whip it thing going on now.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, what the fuck, man?
What
It
is
was
go-
like
do you know
something
anything about
stupid
that?
you did. It's like something stupid you did when you were like a teenager, like once or twice. You didn't fucking huff these fucking stupid.
I am not exaggerating one bit. I have found literally tens of thousands of
Oh,
those
yeah.
things, the empty cartridges
Oh, yeah.
around later on these
Bags
streets.
of them everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I started thinking about maybe I should just keep them for the aluminum and take them to the scrapyard. There's so fucking many of them out here.
Oh my God! I mean, my friend and I walk around these neighborhoods around the studio,
Yeah.
and I think we could probably brought in like probably 20 pounds of them things. Yeah, I mean, everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're dangerous too if you're a runner or a bicyclist or even a car probably get them caught in somewhere.
That's why I'm saying, like, that's where my big issue comes in with it. Other than that, I don't see, because I mean, it's being transported here by somebody to these lower level schmucks that are always getting busted for it and whatnot, And then there's a broader issue there. So, anyway, what I wanted to, before I forget, before we run out of time, what was it? Oh, yeah, Halloween.
Right, you wanna play that again?
Well, no, we should probably talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what I was gonna. The next thing, topic I want to cover, the protests we're planning for
Well,
Halloween
It's a rally,
rally.
right?
Okay,
I mean, so we got to build that. If people want to speak up, that's up all on them. But this is a rally on that issue, basically. So
And we've showed, and I'll show it again before as we're wrapping up to the, and also you can check it out on Facebook, folks, and this
Well,
is
that
live
and-
on Facebook, so.
that, and I mean, we're going to talk about COVID, I guess, maybe here in the near future. But just in terms of being locked in and the paranoia and the people, like, I guess, losing culture in that sense because, I mean, we've already kind of lost it with people having their faces buried in these things all the time anyway, but now suddenly, like, you can't go anywhere. I mean, nothing's open enough for only a little bit, or people, besides all the businesses and people losing their jobs and all that other stuff going on too. She just got slapped down, and now she's trying to do it a different way legally. But the fact of the matter is like, I guess, from what I understand, that there's no decree that has to be followed, whether unconstitutional or not, because of that Supreme Court ruling. So that, and I just really don't. I mean, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not Republican, but I really, really, really don't like Democrats right now with what's going on. I really, really don't.
No, because-
I mean, I've never really liked them before to begin with. I don't like anything about them. But in particular, the last 3-4 years, I guess I crawled under a rock while I was dealing with what I was dealing with, because some of the stuff I've been seeing I didn't watch until recently. And, like we've talked about before, it's insane. Like, 1,000 people have died from what's been going on. And I think that part of, like, the Antifa BLM thing that's happening, besides being used as a tool, is also sort of a symptom of that frustration of being locked into this new Orwellian kind of this new normal kind of, like, fucked up thing that's going on. You know what I'm saying? So, like, there's their whole weird agenda, destroying the nuclear family and pronoun culture, transgender culture thing, that's all, I guess, good and well until they started burning shit down, and and these Democrats, it's true, it's making the conservative argument ring more true to people maybe now before than it did in the past, because they're so out there that the common senseness of conservatism, you know what I'm saying, which may have been viewed only from snooty white men in the past, is now making sense to people. You know what I'm saying? Like I read one article where they're saying that the blacks that are saying this conservative stuff are just blacks that are grabbed by whites to parrot what we're saying to reinforce what we're saying. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's like,
Instead of them actually, like, adhering to Booker T. Washington's whole thing on it about this victim mentality, and they need it. You know what I'm saying?
well, the shameless
And
plug.
then that's their actual opinion. No, they're just ones that we grabbed that would parrot our argument for us to make us sound better. Because we have a few blacks that say that. No, it's making sense that Democrat side for a long time has not, done anything but manipulate people and pit people between each other. And you literally have the whole spectrum now. Transgender, black, Latinx. I'd never heard that till recently. Latinx, what the fuck is that? Like all the he, she thing, babies. All that stuff is coming from that side. And so much of it is so wild and so sick. And I really wish people in Flint would kind of wake up to that. Because, I mean, I'm pretty sure, isn't Layton a Democrat too? I mean, this is...
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, I'm not a Trump supporter, but I'm really, really pissed off at how Democrats are in the last couple of years.
Well, it's like, the thing is, the Democrats, and I've been saying this, well, another shameless plug too, we have a man who's been doing a show from the studio for years now, Mr. George Moss. He does a show, What's Going On Mondays. He's a black conservative. He's been accused of, like, parodying the white man's way. But the thing is, that's what I just astonished. I mean, there's something you can actually offer up to the liberal and saying, look, you did such a good job allowing people, arguing the case of being accepted a person for their ideas or for their content or their character, rather, that now they can actually develop the character on their own. They don't have to read from your script. And that's what they have a hard time. It's like basically they look up on the minorities, the
Well,
Democratic
they
Party.
want you to be in those categories.
They want you to be in those categories. They want you to be pigeonholed, stereotyped. See, I studied social sciences. It was my major. The majority of my classes were in that area. And they always said, don't stereotype, pigeonhole, or categorize people. What do those disciplines do? They categorize, pigeonhole, and stereotype people.
Right.
That's exactly what they do.
Well, what killed me too is, like, because I guess he could have considered me a lefty back in the day, But again, a lot of people that I was with and activism that was going on wasn't like this, and
No, because you're considered about wanted a more emphasis back on well, you're with ACT UP, so ACT UP was like, they wanted more concentration, more energy, more resources available for the AIDS research and all that. And most people, came around to finding that it was an intelligent thing to do. I mean, they did. I mean, besides even it's something that might not help AIDS, there's actually something out there medically wrong with people, that certain medicines being, originally geared towards a treatment could be used for these other ailments or these other issues or
they found out
diseases.
a lot more about other things too, like autoimmune disorders and shit like that,
Right.
because of it. Yeah, we just accelerated the issue as
Right.
much as we could, So like now, and back then I may have even been a Planned Parenthood supporter, but I was uneducated because I hate to say that now because I didn't know about Margaret Sanger back then, but I do have this firm part of me that has a problem with the state interfering with you at all with your body, and I get that from women. I get that. Don't tell me what to stick or not stick in my. I get that, But at the same time, when you learn about Margaret Sanger and the eugenics and all the crap and plucking them like weeds and the shit that she said and the intent of the originator, who's like, I guess, glorified by Hillary too or whatever. The purpose was to kill as many black babies as possible. And that hot bitch, that hot chick, Caitlin Bennett that I was going about, the Liberty Hangout chick.
Yeah.
She's got the stats right on every time, I forget the number. But when you think about it, and they talk about the mortality rate being like low among black people and stuff like that, well, I mean, most of them are getting aborted through Planned Parenthood. So I mean, so I was left in the sense that I didn't like the state making a decision about anybody's body, but at the same time, in the years past, and I've learned more about that stuff, and it makes sense. I don't like Planned Parenthood at all now. I get it, you know what I'm saying? But that's the left. They are okay with that kind of mass murder, just murder disguised in a helping women, situation. like Crowder going in as a transgender and still getting the morning after stuff or whatever, even though they couldn't figure out that he's had female pee.
That's hilarious.
Female pee. Man, the fucked up part is that the drugs would have caused him physical problems if he actually would have taken it. So.
The left,
But yeah,
they always think that everybody's they have a tendency to see everything in the terms of like a societal construct, or a cultural construct. They don't have a tendency they say they claim they follow science, but they don't follow science on a lot of other issues other than the lockdowns, because that now gives them the power they like. I think that's what they really enjoy, controlling people's behavior, controlling people's actions. I think they like that. I'm not a leftist, by the way, folks. I mean, I'm a libertarian. I think I'm not a true Republican because I don't worship police officers. Think they're necessary. Don't want to defund them. I want reform. Okay, and I don't worship Israel. I think it's a state. I don't think we should have to support it. Another country. I think they do a lot of bad things to the people who have been living there for generations. And I don't see how that's much different than I get accused of being a white guy in America. What I did to the whites did to the Native Americans. I don't see where there's any difference. I think the objection to that, the state of Israel on that behalf, is very accurate, very good summation. So that's the reason I can't be a Republican. Nothing is I don't belong to a country club, and I don't walk around wearing Izods, okay? So, I mean,
Right,
I don't get my hair really short.
That's funny though, because that's what's like they're trying to change that image. But yeah, it's at the same time with the Democrats, like we're running out of time. I still, once I learned all that I have learned up to this point, their history up till now, finally, the beauty of the internet. It's still the slave master with the rednecks, and then the slaves below, because and what people don't get, but there's evidence in history if you read about the South, that like whites and blacks, even though it was a smidge above because they were the rednecks, they were still garbage. You know what I'm saying? They were still tenement squalor living conditions. These were not wealthy men that were out there cracking the whip for the stinking wealthy guy in the house. So I get it. Being a slave is much, much worse, but at the same time, they're still playing that game.
Look at the
where they have the very smidgen, little tiniest amount of their party has all this wealth and power and money, and then they've got their little white rednecks and their little categorized communities that they keep playing back and forth against each
Well,
other.
look at the capos in the Holocaust camps, so, the concentration camps in Nazi Germany, Nazi, held countries too, like Latvia and all those other countries. It was the capos who were Jews themselves, actually, chosen to enforce laws over fellow prisoners. And they're far more brutal a lot of times than the SS were. And they're from the same ethnic group or racial or religious, quasi-religious group they belong to, whatever. So, I mean, basically, there's a great book, by the way. He's got his own podcast, too, but I haven't yet been able to hear it yet. Jim Goad, Goad, like goad somebody. He wrote a book called The Redneck Manifesto years ago. And he talks about the very stuff you alluded to about the South and how what they call the poor white trash, the poor white trash or the trailer park trash, we call them. They're descendants of people who are sharecroppers, children, back in the, before the end of the Civil War. So they were treated terribly. Matter of fact, a lot of times sharecroppers' families had the produce that they actually produced grabbed from them for the master's family to feed their slaves, because they were living on the property. They were considered like parasites, even though they're producing food. So, I mean, it was horrible. And it wasn't a black-white thing. It was, we got power, and everybody does that. Once they get power, they get more brutal and violent than the people they protested against. It's been a tendency. The French peasants chopping off heads of aristocrats,
Yeah.
it went beyond measure, and beyond any kind of reasonable,
Yeah.
rage,
That brings me, are we gonna shut down here in a minute?
Well, I got a little bit of time, yeah.
How much? 10, 15?
About 6, 7 minutes.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
that brings me to the quote that I was trying to bring to you earlier from, because you asked me about my Facebook name, Anselm Belagarik. I think it's Anselm Belagarik or Garrigue, I'm not sure. But
French names are hard.
he wrote Anarchist Manifesto during the French Revolution, and I think it was French Revolution. And it's a pretty short manifesto, but my favorite quote from him is, it's vulgar error has taken anarchy to be synonymous with civil war. And it's, just again, a thing from a piece of history to remind people, of how things get played out. Because you're a libertarian, a lot of libertarians are also kind of anarchist, because it's a similar concept of not having a strict order and intrusion into your life from a government entity. You know what I'm saying? That's the bottom line. But every single time we find ourselves in the situation like we are in now with Antifa and BLM, they are, again, making that intentional use of the wrong use of the word and the meaning of it. So that's an elegant way of saying it, vulgar error, but I don't think it was vulgar error. I think it was vulgar intent.
Yeah, I do too. I agree with that.
And so, again, like, I guess I'm libertarian too, or anarchist. I don't care about either party. I don't care about any of the parties, whether it's communist, Democrat, socialist, whatever, Republican, independent. In fact, I don't really like party politics that much at all.
Because let's face it, I mean,
But,
they attempt to get all people from under their umbrella. Guess what? I just don't see how you can make a. There's certain things like, say, you'd have to basically gauge, like, this group's 90% in agreement with what I do. This group's 40% what I wanted. I'm going to go with the 90% group that I agreed 90% with. That's about basically, and that's basically when you become an adult, you understand life's never going to be a perfect scenario. Life's a series of trade-offs.
well,
That's what it
the
is.
thing is like, because I've been in groups, activist groups, where we've run everything by consensus, and that can kind of make sense for the most part when it's a small group, whatever, or if it's a very, very, very important decision for everybody, or whatever. But generally speaking, most people can abide with a 2/3 majority, when it comes to actually having to vote on something, whether it's personal among your family or business or whatever, you know what I mean? But I don't think that these parties, anyway, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. But I just really have a big problem with not just Whitmer. It's my birthday too, so I'm kind of annoyed that
Happy
this
birthday.
whole idea of COVID-19 is like, what? Now I don't get to see people,
And she enjoys it.
Celebrating my birthday, the globe over, like
see,
I
the
have
thing
all
is-
my life.
Well, I've talked to healthcare professionals just the other day. I talked to a couple of them, and they're working, they're nurses. And I said, I'm sorry, I said, I just don't see this any much different than a flu. And they looked around, they looked at each other, and they said, we see the same thing. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
the flu, I mean, flus, the thing is, when you concentrate on something, you're gonna see a lot of, I mean, people criticize people who say, we're doing more testing, that's why we find more COVID. They said, aha, but that means it's so rampant. I went, no, it means it's more prevalent in the world anyway. That's the point we're trying to make when we're saying that statement. It's more prevalent. I mean, let's face it, right on the sprays of Lysol, it's been around 15, 20 years.
That was my
You-
first thought when this
Right.
broke out was
Right.
Lysol,
Right, exactly.
Because
But
it says
anyway,
coronavirus, right? Yeah.
I think we did a good job, and I'm gonna, on the way out, I'm gonna play those two things again for
Well,
more
yeah,
information.
just to touch on that, like, do your research yourself, people, because, yeah, there's a lot of questions about it. How they test, how they marked people as COVID-19 and said they died from it when they maybe didn't, to stack the bills for the hospitals or whatever. But we're going to have a video of a doctor that discusses this issue next week, or later on this week before Halloween. But meet at the Federal Building at noon, and or just wander around downtown. But we're going to primarily start at the Federal Building and walk over to the State Building and come back. Anybody that wants to haunt downtown Flint in the in-between.
I hope to see a lot of people out there too.
So
I
I
really
think it'd be
do.
cool, because if if people really are afraid or just want to respect social distancing anyway, we don't have to be gathered as like a big mob protest.
No.
There's plenty of space downtown. It's empty right now. You can have 10 people
It's empty
walking
most
down the
of time.
street, stay 10 feet away from each other. Like the whole, experience could just be very cool if people actually come down with some cool costumes and stuff, so.
Well, thanks for coming in today, and we'll be doing on the earlier and then later on this week too. So
Yeah.
thanks again, and watch for this stuff. People, you're going to see some more information flashed on the screen there for a while, and I encourage you to come out. And I hope to see you there, even though I don't know who you are at this point, but maybe that'll change. Have a good one, all right?
All right, thanks.